this episode of the Diabetes Podcast, we'll be talking about the remission mindset. This no-fluff conversation may feel bold, even uncomfortable, but it could change your life. If you've been stuck managing diabetes while your numbers, meds, and worries climb, this episode will hand you the mindset, urgency, and strategy to move from coping to conquering. You'll hear the 5 truths that make remission possible and sustainable, why responsibility is your superpower, why management keeps you stuck, how serious and expensive diabetes really is, and why getting the right help is non-negotiable. If you're ready to stop waiting for permission and start leading your path to health like your life depends on it, because it does, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Diabetes Podcast. I'm Richie.
And I'm Amber.
And Amber, you just got back from the annual Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialist Conference in Phoenix, Arizona.
I did.
Tell us about it. Did you learn anything new? Was there anything eye-opening that you got from this conference of diabetes educators?
I think when you go to a conference every year, anytime, being in education for 20 plus years, it's not really that you learn anything phenomenally different. You just kind of take it all in. And if you learn, a percentage of a fraction of a percentage more and put it in your tool chest, that's a win. But the biggest thing that I noticed year over year is last year there were a lot of presentations on medications and especially your GLP-1 receptor agonists and continuous glucose monitors, always insulin pump therapy, always. And that's important because that's in the realm that diabetes educators really have to know insulin very well, and that's understandable. But the shift this year was in prevention strategies. There were at least 2 talks on prevention strategy and at least 2 or 3 talks on diabetes self-management education programs and what was working and how to improve those moving forward, and a better discussion about where the focus, in my opinion, really needs to be, which is on prevention, especially in the people most equipped to help move the needle in the other direction in this disease state. So that was good to see. And I will say every year they give questionnaires about what to do better. And that was huge on my evaluation form last year. It was ridiculous the amount of medications that they talked about when yes, diabetes educators need to know the medications, how they work, the side effects, how much A1C points it's supposed to take somebody down. But it's really about prevention and putting this into remission. And there was one talk on that last year. And I don't know that there was even a talk solely focused on that this year. And that's always going to be disappointing to me. Like, it's just, it's a sad state of affairs, in my opinion.
Okay. Was there any new metrics or anything kind of eye-opening that came in any most recent kind of state of the union of diabetes, I guess is how I would describe it.
Yeah. I mean, I've always known that like about 1/10 of the population has type 2 and more than 1/3 have prediabetes, but then there's always this percentage of undiagnosed people with prediabetes that don't even know. But then one of the speakers on her slide had that 1 in 2 people in the United States has diabetes or prediabetes. And
one in two?
1 in 2. And I looked that up to make sure that was actually sound, that data was out there. Not that I didn't trust the person, but just that if I'm going to put something out there myself, I want to validate that is the truth. And yeah.
Now, is that one, so half of the American population, or is this just adults, or what?
North American population.
Okay. Wow.
Adults, U.S. adults, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Good call out. Has either prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, whether they know it or not, apparently, you know.
So, so if that's the case, the audience for this podcast is much bigger than I thought it was originally. And that's not a good thing. So today we're talking about the remission mindset. It's kind of five truths that we found that are critical to really starting to turn that diabetes journey around. You know, there's a lot of language about reversing diabetes. Just like driving a car, you cannot put it into reverse until you come to a full stop. So until we can, you know, kind of stop applying the gas, let off the gas, and hopefully put on the brakes on this thing, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to reverse diabetes, put diabetes into remission without really kind of adopting these 5 truths. So Amber, if you would kick us off, first off, why 5 truths? Why not 10 or 45? Or, I mean, we've already established it's not just one thing, right? But we've also established there's a lot of things. Why 5?
Well, I could have chose 1 or 20, but 5 is a manageable number. 5 really, you know, when I sat down and looked at what's going on in the mindset, what's going on with the cost, what's going on with a lot of the lifestyle behaviors, it just made sense to come up with 5 that connected each other and made sense and was something that people could take action on. And they really are interconnected, because you cannot go to a buffet and say, I'll take just that one or just that one. You really need all 5 or an understanding of all 5 to have success in diabetes remission.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, let's start at the beginning and also the end, because the start is you. You know, you are ultimately responsible for your health. That is truth, pillar, what have you. That is it begins and ends with you.
Okay. So flesh that's about as helpful as I need to diet and exercise. Can you flesh that out a little bit more?
Yes. So the average general practitioner has 2,000 people under their care.
That's in the United States, correct?
In the United States, and roughly 18 minutes on average to spend with each patient. I remember when I used to talk to primary care physicians on a regular basis, some of them would have 25 people a day that they would see, which was just like, how do you care? Like, genuinely give care to 25 people every day in a way that they need fully, you know, especially when you have more chronic complications like something as serious as diabetes. And that's how you end up with this generic nutrition advice, like don't eat anything white and you need to move more and just try to exercise, you know, join the gym, lose some weight, these generic things that really aren't helpful to most people. Some people are going to take that and run with it. You know, they're going to get scared stiff and they're going to do something, make a decision and change and not need any help and do great. And some of those people are great for the rest of their life, and others of them do great in the beginning and then lose momentum and kind of burn out. And some people are just have no idea what to do. The majority of people have no idea what they were just told, have no idea what it means. What is prediabetes? What do I do about it? Why does it even matter? I feel the same as I did yesterday.
Right.
So that's the thing, is really understanding that this disease is progressive. It is a big deal. It puts people at 4 to 5 times greater risk of heart disease or stroke than the average person. And heart disease is the number one killer in the United States. And knowing that you have power to make a difference here.
Okay. So what does that look like for the average person? As far okay. So my healthcare provider is not responsible for my diabetes. I am.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? I know what I think it means.
Yeah, if you think of it, like if you treat your health like a business, in your current habits that you do day in and day out, that's your performance report at work. Would the board give you a bonus, or would they fire you? It's looking at it in those terms of if you're in charge of taking care of this vessel that is your body, how well have you done? And it's not about assessing blame or shame or fault. It is just really looking at what is putting you at risk for prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. How do you mitigate the risk? And just in general, as a population, we are horrible at risk assessment. Mm-hmm. Absolutely horrible. Great example is people are afraid of flying in planes, yet cars are way more dangerous than planes. I don't know the numbers, but take my word for it. Yeah.
I'll take it a step further. Again, I just got stuck in military mode a couple decades ago.
That's okay.
It is not unheard of to be promoted in the field. When things are going bad enough, whether you've had the training or whether you feel, or whether you've gone to the right school or had the right education or are equipped with the right tools, all that kind of stuff, at some point in time, it's not unrealistic if things get bad enough that, you're in charge now. And that's never a comfortable place to be.
Right.
Particularly if you don't feel well equipped, particularly if you don't have the information as it relates to diabetes. You're not an endocrinologist. you haven't right. studied this disease for years. You don't know the side effects of the medications.
You don't know what you don't know, and that is the most dangerous thing.
And as scary as all that is, the scarier thing is if you do not ultimately put your heart and soul into destroying this disease that's destroying your body. This unwelcome metabolic state that you almost certainly did not consciously pursue. Right. This isn't something that anybody.
I've yet to meet someone that says, "Yay, diabetes." It just doesn't happen.
But this enemy is real, and this enemy is killing you, whether you realize it or not. And nobody else is going to be able to get this thing out of you. It's going to have to be you. You're going to have to, if you don't have the education, you're going to have to seek it out. If you don't know what to do, you're going to need to get smart, and you need to get smart quick.
Yes. And I think that leads perfectly into the second truth, which is that managing diabetes is a losing strategy. That's why we talk remission, not diabetes management. And that is something from the conference. The conference is diabetes management. How do we manage this disease? And that is a flawed question in and of itself. This is not a disease to be managed. It's like bailing out a sinking ship. If you're getting water from a hole in the boat and you just keep taking the buckets and dumping out the water. You need to patch the hole in the boat.
I like to think of it like there's not an acceptable amount of cancer I can have.
That's powerful.
If we're gonna talk about disease, let's talk about cancer, right? The second you get a diagnosis, your physician is circling it on the charts, and they're coming up with an aggressive plan. Actually, we're going to behave very violently towards cancer. I'm either going to bombard it with radiation, right? Or I'm going to give you chemotherapy, which is basically, I'm going to poison you, not quite enough to kill you, but probably enough to kill cancer. But we're going to manage diabetes. We're going to try and keep you at acceptable levels of side effects of this disease that on a long enough timeline, forget the most likely causes of mortality being your heart attacks and your strokes. This thing will most likely compromise your feet, ultimately resulting in amputation. It's gonna compromise your kidneys, resulting in renal failure.
That's
and dialysis.
You're leading into the next truth, which is diabetes is that bad.
Yeah, management means I'm okay living with diabetes. Really, that's what it is. I'm going to try and find as comfortable a living with this disease as I can. And what's necessary for remission is I didn't start out with this metabolic state. I want it gone. Whatever time I got left, I want it to be as good as humanly possible. And I cannot be good and coexist with this disease.
Yes. And I think to add to what you're saying about management is that people that I talk to, they're like, I've heard, it's like heard it through the grapevine. There's some whispering that diabetes remission is possible. And I believe it because they want to believe it. They need to believe it because what's the alternative is a horrible, lifelong, degenerative disease.
Right.
But because of the state of our U.S. healthcare system and physicians' offices and insurance reimbursement, because of so many factors, it is unlikely that diabetes remission will occur. And because it is unlikely, not many people talk about it. And the reason it's unlikely is because if you don't fully understand the problem, and if you don't understand strategies that will fix the problem, then it is indeed unlikely. It's not unlikely for the people that we work with. It's not unlikely when you know the right nutrition strategies, the right sleep schedule, the right habits, the right mindset. It's not unlikely at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's very, very possible.
Yeah. When I stop doing the behaviors that make again, like that metabolic warfare mindset, right? Diabetes needs fuel. Diabetes needs resources to exist. If I don't want mold in my shower, I got to keep that thing dry.
And vinegar.
And vinegar. Yeah. So if I clean it out after every time I use it and squeegee it down, the likelihood of mold getting there is greatly reduced. Let's just put it that way. Diabetes is the same way. When I stop fueling the disease starts to wither. And when I absolutely starve the disease dies, is really what it comes down to. If you want to kill diabetes, you deny it resources.
Right. And to be very clear, we're talking about type 2 diabetes. I know we said that in the beginning, but I love my people with type 1. And I just want to be very clear that there is a difference between remission in the space of type 2 diabetes, which is the most common type, which 95+% of people have, versus type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition that destroys the insulin producing cells of the pancreas, the pancreatic beta cells. So thanks for that intermission. I just always like to be very clear about who we're speaking about with remission.
Type 2 diabetes remission.
Yes. Yep. So let's get into the more painful piece. And this is one that I'm an optimist through and through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really challenging for me to, I don't want to say hold people's feet to the fire, but help people understand the realities of what I have seen in 20 years, 20 plus years now of working in diabetes. Like, I have seen the worst of the worst. I have seen people lose a toe to a foot to below the knee to above the knee to both legs above the knee, and then their life. I've seen dialysis, and most people on dialysis are going to pass away within the next 2 to 5 years. And it's slow and insidious, and it's super slow and super not a big deal until it is exactly the opposite. And that's the part that breaks my heart. And that's the reason that I have this third truth, which is diabetes is that bad. Right. Because as much as I understand that it doesn't have to be this way, it doesn't have to be that bad, I also know that you've got to take extreme action away from diabetes in order to keep it from being that bad, to keep it from popping in like nothing you've ever seen or understood or ever wanted to know or understand in your whole life.
Yeah.
And the saddest thing to me is when somebody loses a toe or a foot or has some diabetic retinopathy, some things that damage their eyesight, and they say, no one ever told me this. No one ever explained this to me. And for something to be preventable and no one ever told anyone. So if this podcast strictly exists for awareness, for people to understand that it is that bad, I will sleep soundly at night every night, because this message has to be out there. And I do not want to be the bearer of bad news. I want to spread sunshine and rainbows and happiness all the time. Like, that is my personality. That is the way that I show up in all the things that I do. However, this has to be said, because this might be the only time somebody with prediabetes or diabetes hears it.
We have the luxury of not necessarily having to have bedside manner on this podcast. Well,
bedside manner aside, that's a totally different thing, because I've been in rooms with endocrinologists with patients, with doctors with patients, in hospitals, in an outpatient setting. I've been in rooms where doctors have had great bedside manner and where they've had awful bedside manner. And that is something totally separate. Horrible bedside manner is an example would be when I was covering down on peds endocrinology, and the endocrinologist comes in, and it's as if that child, because we're talking about like someone who was maybe 12 years old, that child's a piece of meat. You know, they come in from symptoms of type 2 diabetes, excessive thirst, excessive tiredness, weight gain, and just go to the doctor. The doctor sends them to the endocrinologist based on like a finger stick, blood sugar, point of care test. And so they're there full of fear, not knowing what's going on. And the endocrinologist comes in, just inspects this child like a piece of meat. Obesity, acanthosis nigricans, like just messing with his collar. Acanthosis nigricans is like a darkening of the skin on the back of the neck and like a little bit of thickening. Pretty telltale for type 2 diabetes. And it's just like type 2 diabetes. And basically leaves, and I'm the educator, and I'm supposed to then interpret that. And I'm in shock, and I can't imagine this poor family, like, what did he just say? What just happened? And I'm there like picking up the pieces of what was just said. That is horrible bedside manner. And I've also seen the flip side of that with an endocrinologist who explained everything that was going on. This is what we're going to do. This is not the end. This is the beginning of healing and turning this around for you. That is bedside manner. And it's not the same thing. Bedside manner is your demeanor and how you approach a patient as a human being, and as you would someone that you love or someone that you care for, someone in your family. But you could have amazing bedside manner and not understand diabetes remission. You can want to be helpful and not be helpful, right? Like, I'm sure you understand that.
I
piece.
hear you. I see it a little bit different. My educational background's in psychology, and I know that if the stimulus is strong enough, you can learn in one trial. So give me some strong stimulus. Give me some numbers that really illustrate the severity of this. I mean, you've spoken anecdotally. Give me some real numbers. Then. What this looks like. What this looks like for the endocrinologist, for the folks that are dealing with, let's just call it late stage diabetes, because the whole mindset around it's not that bad really means it hasn't happened to me yet. I used to drive aggressively until I got into an accident. And now I drive like Grandpa Gruber because I know that can happen. I know that when I don't behave behind the wheel, that not only me, but other people could be hurt. So help our listeners understand what it really looks like at scale for those that have not experienced the worst that this disease has to offer. Okay.
So we know that diabetes is the number one cause of non-accidental amputation, and neuropathy almost always is present prior to amputation. So there's a canary in the coal mine there. And 1 in 4 people, or 25% of people with diabetes, will develop chronic kidney disease. Diabetic retinopathy is the second leading cause of non-congenital blindness, meaning if you weren't born blind and then you become blind, diabetic retinopathy is mostly how it happened. And men with diabetes often develop erectile dysfunction 10 to 15 years earlier than others. And most of the time, erectile dysfunction meds don't work in most of these men.
Okay.
And it's like, what numbers do you want? Because I could go on and on with the statistics, but another like really chilling number there is nearly, speaking of the kid in the endocrinology office years ago, nearly 1 in 5 adolescents aged 12 to 18 and 1 in 4 people aged 19 to 34 have prediabetes.
Say that one again.
1 in 5 between the ages of 12 to 18 have prediabetes, and 1 in 4, or 25% of people 19 to 34 have prediabetes.
What is going on?
A lot of things that we've talked about in all the podcasts prior to now. Sedentary lifestyle, the fact that 40 to 50% of the food that we eat is processed, ultra processed food. Yeah.
Particularly the youngest population, I don't know. These kids are basically just eating what's put before them.
Absolutely.
Right. They're not, they don't even have choice in this. I don't think.
And the beginning of atherosclerosis can start as early as age 2, and it takes about 20 years. So we're 22, and 19 to 34 have ages 19 to 34, and we're talking age 22.
So basically the same story that we've been talking all along about how this is kind of a 15 to 20 year journey.
Yes.
If that starts in infancy, then I can expect
it starts when you're
15. Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
This is another sort of like related, unrelated thing. Because I don't know if we haven't really gotten into like the financial burden yet, but it's right here in my little stats. So I'm going to say it. 48 to 64% of the lifetime medical costs for a person with diabetes are attributed to complications like heart disease and stroke. So, it's kind of like diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death, but people who have diabetes are 4 to 5 times greater risk of heart disease and stroke.
It increases the likelihood of
number one and number two, number three,
factor,
number 1 and number 3. Yeah. It's like what part of your health are you willing to sacrifice before it's urgent?
Yeah.
And most people would say none.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, it's really about not knowing what you don't know. And I hope that if you're listening to this podcast, there's no more not knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
Just getting really clear on what this is and what you're up against.
I mean, the heart disease is bad, but at least it's quick when it happens. The stroke is the one that scares me to death. I had a pretty formative experience when I was younger. A friend of our family had a stroke, and I went over to kind of help out occasionally, trying to get him upright and walking, which basically was me and his spouse on either side of him supporting him. And, very much you could tell some days the lights were on and some days the lights were off. And when the lights are off, I don't know what that's like, but that sounds awful to me. And I would just about do anything to make sure that doesn't happen.
Right. And it's amazing to me that I've heard out of people's mouths, and I'm not talking 1 or 2 people. If I die, I die. You got to die somehow.
Yeah.
These sorts of things. And the ignorance in that statement. Like, I've never said that to anyone directly. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, which is what I want to say. I don't. I really try to just listen and understand where a statement like that is coming from. And in some ways, I kind of get it, like you do have to die somehow, I guess. But knowing what I know.
We're all mortal, but don't choose a bad death. That doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I know now about quality of life and what I have seen is that most of the time people live in pretty decent health for so many years, and then the last 20 are not so good. And if you look at healthcare costs, they match that. Like I don't remember the number, so I don't dare say it, but it was somewhere in the realm of like 80% of lifetime healthcare costs are in that last 5 to 10 years, which is insane. And it is really about having the best quality of life.
Yeah. I've saved all these years to be miserable the last
and to spend it all of that you've worked so hard for your entire life to see it go in the last 5 to 10 years. And that's I see that often in diabetes where people give up because it's like, I was fine and now I'm not, and I've lost this and I've lost that, and now it's $10,000 a year between the copays and the hospital bills, and it is not right, and it is not fair.
Is part of that just that, like, you talked about not a lot of people talking about remission? Is part of that loss of hope that they're just from their perspective, there is no hope. This is my life now, and this is
because it wasn't for lack of trying. They've gone to their doctor's appointments. They've shown up. They've done what they were told to do to the best of their ability. Yet nothing has worked. And every time they go to the doctor, a new medication was added every single time. And they feel like every time I go to the doctor, I'm just getting another medication added. So why am I going to the doctor? What is this about? And it can turn into really complicated regimens. Like once you get a basal insulin added, which is a shot a day, which only covers down on breathing, living, sleeping. It doesn't cover the food that you eat or higher blood sugars because of stress or infection or any number of things. But But to cover down on that, you need an additional 3 to 4 shots a day. And most of the time, if people have that regimen, they're only going to do like 2 shots a day because they don't want to give more than that. So they'll either not have carbs at that meal, or they won't consider it carbs, even though that snack has more carbs than their dinner meal. Like it's a whole thing. Like it's a whole nother layer of complexity when insulin comes into the game. And in fact, like the number one ER admissions for people who have diabetes is low blood sugar from not matching insulin with food, because these regimens can be very complicated.
Yeah.
They're not always, but they can be.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you cannot have to have insulin, of course, everybody wants that. People want to not be on medication, but you can't just want to not be on medication. You have to take aggressive action away from what would require the medication. And we did that whole 12 core defects in type 2 diabetes that in all 12, we talked about how lifestyle changes are better than the medication.
Yeah.
The outcomes in the studies are there that support it. So truth 4, are you ready for it? We've touched on it.
Yeah.
Diabetes is expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just financially. Diabetes is expensive to your state of mind, to your mental energy, to how you feel about yourself.
But also financially.
Yeah, also financially. So let's just get into that economic cost. The total, so we'll go like big picture and then we'll come down to the mirror. We'll bring it to the mirror. The total annual cost of diabetes in the United States is $413 billion with a B, billion dollars annual cost for diabetes in the United States, making it the most expensive chronic condition in our nation.
So perspective wise,
I can't even give you perspective on that number.
Like we just doubled it, but that number there was not wildly different than the amount of money spent on the Department of Defense back in my day,
which is the largest spending of the country, pretty much. I mean,
and
it outspends every other country in the world.
Up towards $500 billion a year spent on a preventable disease.
Well, to be fair, I think some of those costs are type 1 diabetes, but the overwhelming majority of the costs are type 2. Okay, that's fair.
You just told us 95% of the people with diabetes. So I hear you. And type 1 people, the type 1 people we work with are awesome. Let me tell you, like we have a lot of love. We need to do a type 1 episode. We absolutely do, because a lot of type 1 love. But we're talking to the 95% that have some degree of choice in this. One uniform thing I do hear from the type 1 folks is, man, if I could turn this thing off, I sure would. It's right. Not to make light of it, but they're very, a almost uniform, I don't want to say resentment, but it's resentment adjacent. It's like, if, this was nature put this on me, if I could take action to make this go away, I would have done it already. It's really what we're talking about. So I hear you, but the ads on television are not being marketed to people with type 1 diabetes.
Nope, you don't see a lot of insulin ads.
I do not. Nope. I do not. I see a lot of ads specifically about how this particular drug can help you manage your diabetes. So there's that number that makes sense. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. 20%
it
of
makes
all
sense, and it doesn't. Yeah.
Ad revenue in the United States is tied to pharmaceuticals. A fifth is just for drugs that we can take. So there's definitely some big money in this. And
I never said there was not.
Yeah, I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat, but
please don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm going to say it. People with diabetes are more valuable to a for-profit healthcare system than people that have their diabetes under control or into reversal. Because if I have a client that is going to be dependent on my medication for the rest of their life for any kind of quality of life, I'm in a good way. And in fact, this upward trend, now we're talking about half the US population is going to need my medication as long as they're not being as aggressively marketed to taking action, taking control in adopting the behaviors that put this thing into remission, that make this go away. Yeah, I probably would sit on that too. You know, I'm not suggesting that clinicians are doing this. I'm just suggesting that we're living in the age of unintended consequences. And as long as
clinicians have nothing to do with the marketing of
I'm just saying
diabetes medication.
I'm just saying big
really.
Business is going to try and make as much money as humanly possible.
In a capitalist society, if you have a customer for life, that is the gold standard.
So
marketing and business.
I do think that there may be some unintentional prioritization of, let's just call it, techniques to make diabetes better and not less profitable techniques that make diabetes go away.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is there's less profit in remission than there is in having a customer for life on a medication.
Well, I know there is. Otherwise, we'd be really rich.
Fair enough.
I mean that's the honest to God truth, you know? Like if your doctor, if you could sit down with your doctor and they could be like, look, here's your plan, this and this and this and this and this. And if you execute this correctly, and we're going to check in for a little bit, but at the end of 2 years, I don't need to talk to you again. You don't need to come in for your annual checkup. You've got the tools, all you need for self-care. So save yourself some time in the future. Let's just drill this down right now. That'd be great. You know, I'd only go to my physician when I'm sick, as opposed to, you know, every 9 weeks. You
well,
know,
you
3
go
months,
yearly for your annual prevention. Just check on things.
But again, my conversations are relatively short. It's usually like, everything looks good. You know, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is when you adopt the behaviors that put diabetes into remission, like every other mortality risk, except for maybe like falling off a cliff or something like that, gets better.
You could argue that falling off a cliff is even better because you have more stability, you have better balance. Especially if you have both your feet versus one. If you're working with us,
you're going to be more mobile. Your balance is going to be better. All that other kind of stuff. But in general, that's part of just kind of taking care of yourself. Yep. Are you doing the things that enable you to move and enjoy life like you were when you were younger and you weren't thinking at all about disease or any of the other kind of stuff?
And I will say that's another thing in talking to so many people about their goals with remission is that they want to just turn back the time. They want to go back to this time prior to the worries of diabetes, prior to the doctor visits where, as I was saying before, every time they go, another medicine is added, and the frustration of just tell me what to do. Like if they knew the strategy and the plan, they knew that it would work, they would do it. But it's old habits die hard. Right. You know, it is a behavior change that needs to happen. And until you understand why it's so important for it to happen and what it means if you don't, you know, what is the cost of inaction, it's harder to take action because it's easier just to status quo, keep doing what you were doing. And I say it's easier in with a lot of reserve in that because it's easier in the moment, but ultimately it's devastational, you know. So back to the cost to the individual.
Yeah, and just one last thing.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about, was it 413 billion? I think
413 billion with the B.
Let's be very candid. A decent chunk of this is being paid for through Medicare.
Right. Yep.
So when you want to talk about the cost of diabetes, you know, hey Doge, if you want to seriously start looking at how to effectively start removing a lot of the financial burden on our Medicare, this is probably a good one to start with.
And you could go down that rabbit hole, and I'm not going to, but I will say cuts were made to Medicare, and it's going to hurt the person with diabetes more than help, because nothing was done in the realm of prevention. Nothing was added in that space.
That goes back to number one. Guess what? That safety net is getting increasingly full of holes.
Yep.
Right? So I need to get really good at taking care of myself, right? You know,
absolutely.
Should there be safety nets? Absolutely, right? But the truth of the matter is they weren't always there. And as of right now, we don't know that they're always going to be there. True. So it is in everyone's best interest to get really good at taking care of themselves.
Absolutely. That is the take home message of what you brought up there for sure. Hey, you got an extra $5,000?
I would love to have an extra $5,000. Do you?
No, I don't have it, but that's about what it costs the person with diabetes versus the person who doesn't have diabetes. On average, $4,800 a year in copay costs. So that's not what their insurance.
So this is out of pocket
copay
just because I have diabetes.
Gotcha. And it doesn't include hospital visits or any kind of emergency room visits.
So what are emergency room visits for diabetes?
Typically, low blood sugar is one of the biggest ones, and high blood sugar is the other.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So usually if it's low blood sugar, it's because of insulin. Sometimes it's your TZDs, your sulfonylureas, but most of the time it's insulin that has done it. Because oftentimes because of the complicated nature of a multiple daily insulin regimen, physicians will up and up and up the basal dose, the 1 shot a day dose, to where it is trying to cover the food during the day. And what that does is during the day, the sugars go higher and higher and higher. And then overnight, they start to plummet. And the goal is that you wake up before they plummet too low. So maybe you might go to bed with blood sugars like 280. And then if you were to wake up at a certain point in the morning, the blood sugar might be 90 to 110. But then if you wait until the dawn phenomenon, the hormones kick in, you might wake up at 220. And people are baffled by this. I went to bed at 180. I woke up at 220. What is going on? You have a liver, and that liver is going to dump out glucose in response to insulin resistance, in response to hormonal changes. And so that's how you can wake up with a higher blood sugar. Or that person could have kind of been headed towards a low. And so gluconeogenesis, the making and putting out of new glucose into the system, into the bloodstream, causes high sugar at that time. And then it just continues to climb and climb and climb with every meal, because the insulin isn't there to match the meal as it should, because it's just that 1 shot of baseline insulin. So every meal bops that number up until it's high before bedtime. And then in the absence of food going into the body during sleep, the sugars come down overnight. So the physician will maybe, let's say like 40 units is what you need for your baseline insulin dose. The doctor will take it up to 70 or 80, trying to do the job of what 4 shots would do, a mixture of basal and mealtime insulin. And it doesn't work very well. And you have a risk of low blood sugar. And it happens all the time, ER visits from lows, because normally you would eat something with a little carbs at night, but then you heard about your friend Joe down the street who just did all protein. And so you have a steak and a salad at dinner, and then you bottom out in the middle of the night and wake up in your own sweat and sometimes urine. It's not fun. And you have low blood sugar.
And those ER visits, that's in addition to the 4,800
Yes.
out of pocket that we were talking about. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I went off on a spiel, but I see it all the time. So it's kind of hard to.
I really just think you're speaking to, let's just say, for the newly diagnosed, like, this is a lot to get your head around. This is a very complex thing.
I imagine it would be.
Yeah. If you haven't dealt with this yet, like, oh boy, don't sit on this. Start taking action and start.
My
getting
hope is that
now.
you never do. My hope is to be wrong. Like, I like to be right. I think as humans, we like to be right about things. Like,
listener, she loves to be right, and will remind you regularly when she is.
Yes, but I will say this is one of the few times that I pray to God that I am wrong. I don't want to be right about any of these things with diabetes.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm an optimist. I want everybody to be happy and healthy and live long lives with a high quality of life their entire lives.
Okay. So tell us about high quality of life. Tell us about long lives.
How do you mean exactly?
Like, okay. What is a year of your life work? Like we talked about, okay, I'm gonna pay some additional stuff for some extra supplies and maybe some medicine and whatever, right? Like, what's a year of your life worth? Because there's a cost to diabetes.
Mm-hmm. I think I can't answer that for people. I think if you're listening, that's a question to reflect on. Like, what dollar amount, what value could you place on a year of a high quality life? Fair enough.
We've definitely encountered some people that have resolved to die, hopefully sooner than later. So
big difference. But like, I've known people, we spoke with a lady once who canceled going to her granddaughter's birthday party because she didn't want to be exposed to those foods and because she didn't have the energy to go. And that is so, like, sad doesn't even begin to cover what that is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that isn't the first time I've heard of something like that. Like family gatherings, people avoid them because they don't want to have to explain why they can't eat like everyone else, or they know that they will eat like everyone else and that they're going to be suffering for that for the next 48 hours in terms of what their blood sugar does. And that, to me, is one of the saddest things is the decreased quality of life and the alienation from the people that you love because they don't understand what you're dealing with and the role of food in our society. And now, like, what if food is what's making you sick?
Right.
How does that change your mindset around, like, what kind of mind twisting thing does that do to people? You know, and the trips that people cancel.
And not just the food making you sick, the food that you've been eting like your entire life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So like if you think about the adolescents.
You gave me some bad, whatever it was.
Yes.
You know, we've all been to the restaurant and had we're not talking about that. We're talking about like my the way that I am culturally eat, you know, in many cases. You know, what has been normal and acceptable and how I have so many positive memories around this thing that's ultimately making me sick.
Yeah. And food has that ability to do that. You know, I remember for the longest time loving Swiss cake, those Little Debbie Swiss cake rolls. Now I think they're disgusting. Like, I can't eat them. But for the longest time, there was a childhood memory in that of unrolling that and peeling the chocolate off and eating it. And like, taking your finger and scraping out the white. But then when you understand like that white stuff there could clog my arteries and lead me to a life that I don't want. When you make that shift in your mindset, it's all about the worth it line.
Yeah.
It just moves so much higher that you're unwilling to accept the things that you used to.
We're talking cost. What are the cost of these food choices?
Yeah. And the worry and the second guessing of, is this okay? I don't know. Is this food going to ultimately kill me? Like, how do you know? How do you know for sure? Yeah. Without having a degree in nutrition, and I think that we've done a pretty good job throughout the podcast up till now.
I think that leads into the fifth truth, really, is what it comes down to.
All right. Gotcha. Truth 5, you need help. Yeah. You need help. You need help. And being willing to ask for help when you need it. And it's probably the hardest thing for most people to admit. Number one, that there's even a problem to begin with, because I used to say denial is the biggest symptom of diabetes. Mm-hmm. Because no, I don't have, that's not me. That's not how I identify as a sick person. I feel fine. I look fine. I have plenty of energy. Because it has happened so gradually, they forget like the energy level that they used to have. And so let me just talk about results of diabetes self-management education in general. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that our working with people is the same as in general, because
first and foremost, like, we just do remission. There's plenty of management offers out there. You can go down to your general practitioner and he'll try. Yep. He or she will make a stab at helping you manage your diabetes.
Yeah.
But to me, again, management is, let me get comfortable with my cancer. That's not acceptable. I feel the same way about the diabetes.
So these are comfortable with cancer numbers. These are not our remission rates and numbers. So just in general, effective blood sugar management can reduce the risk of eye disease, kidney disease, and nerve disease by 40%.
Okay. So, and that's just effective management.
Yep.
So it
stands to reason.
Yeah. Forget empowered diabetes. Yep. If you just did the thing that they talked about in your visit with your endos, actually like started making some of the positive movements, effective management of this will greatly reduce the worst case scenarios of this disease. Mm-hmm.
And if you're able to manage your blood pressure, you can reduce the risk of heart disease and stroke by 33 to 50%. And if you improve your cholesterol numbers, you're going to reduce your risk of cardiovascular complications by 20 to 50%. Here's a big one. These next ones are pretty big. Regular eye exams and timely treatment could prevent up to 90% of diabetes-related blindness.
Good night.
So get your annual dilated eye exam. Dilated eye exams are not fun. You gotta have those stupid dark sunglasses the whole rest of the day, but worth it. They need to dilate your eye to be able to see the back of your eye to make sure that there's nothing going on there that could cause you to be blind later on. Healthcare services that include regular foot exams and patient education could prevent up to 85% of diabetes-related amputations.
I'm pretty sure that's what Wayne of the Trouble Afoot podcast was saying about foot care being so critical for making sure that you're not getting the worst diabetes and in that case.
And Wayne of Trouble Afoot. Yeah. The Charcot Foot podcast. Yes. Yeah. And if you can lower blood pressure, then you can reduce decline in kidney function by 33 to 37%. So it's not like how much motivation do you have or how smart are you. It's about having the right strategy and having support. And I think it's also like you can get, I've talked about this before in in the Facebook group is you can get across the United States by a couple of different means.
Yeah.
You could take a donkey or go on a bike. I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
Like eventually you could get across the country on a bike. People have done it. I wouldn't want to do it. I just can't think of how my fanny and forearms would feel. And the bike repair, I just wouldn't want to do that. You could take a car across country. I wouldn't want to do that either personally. Maybe a big camper and like have everything planned out where to stay at the national parks, but not a car, especially not a little compact car. You could take a plane, a little small plane, or you could take a jet and boom, cross-continental in 7 hours straight flight. I would much rather take the jet. And I think that is what having the proper support and the proper path is about. Yeah.
But using that same analogy, like when we talk about getting to remission as quickly as possible, I think what a lot of people are hoping for is that magic pill. They want to teleport, right? Even faster than
Beam me up, Scotty.
Jet.
Yes.
When we talk about remission, this is going to be a multi-month effort to turn this thing around, at a minimum, to turn this thing around.
Yes. And I think what's often overlooked is the focus is on diabetes as a disease. What magic secret do I need to know to combat diabetes? And it's not about that. It is about what habits have I conditioned throughout my lifetime that don't serve me? What addictions to foods do I have that don't serve me? How am I filling in emotional gaps and needs with food? And how am I filling the gap with shopping or doom scrolling or anything else? And it's looking at what are the behaviors that are keeping you from your goals.
Yeah.
So that's really what I would love to have people examine, either with help or on their own, like looking at where I want to be in 5 years. Because usually people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what you can achieve in 5 years. So if you take a minute and think about where you were 5 years ago in terms of a certain goal, something that you achieved, and did you think that it was possible to be someplace, for better or worse, in just 5 years time? It seems like such a short period of time in many respects. And in a lot of respects, it's a really long period of time that you can make a lot of change in. And I'm not saying that it would take 5 years for a movement away from diabetes to occur. Not at all, like 3 months. But I think that you have to start somewhere, and you have to look at what is really possible with remission from diabetes.
I really like the football analogy. If we talk about remission in kind of the general population, it's about the same. It's around 3%. It's actually a little bit less. It's about the same as the number of collegiate athletes that go on to the pros, right?
Yeah.
But every time that I look at the NFL draft.
And I'm thinking I know that you're talking about remission, but I don't know that you explicitly said like the statistics for remission with the football analogy.
The truth is that you need help, right? So you can absolutely go it on your own, but the most successful kids that I see in the NFL draft are not sitting at the table by themselves.
I don't know that any of them don't have a coach.
They usually have a team of individuals who are very interested in them going in the first round.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That's kind of the approach that's going to get you to remission the fastest. Right. Yeah. There's a lot of information on the interwebs. it's very helpful to have a team that's distilled a lot of that for you to make sure that the time and effort that you're going to spend, and full disclosure, there's going to be some time and there's going to be a tremendous amount of effort. This is a challenge,
right?
Because of all of the obstacles. Let's just call it obstacles to remission. Is really, is what causes a lot of people to fail. It's not just. That's why it's not just do this one thing. There are a lot of circumstances, a lot of societal norms, honestly, particularly in the United States, that are very conducive to the development of type 2 diabetes.
Yep.
So, wouldn't it be nice to have a team of individuals that were, as invested in you getting as healthy as you can be as you are?
Absolutely.
So what's the kind of ask for this week, or what's the kind of the take home action that you would ask for this week, Amber?
I would really ask for people to look at what they want to achieve over the next 5 years. Like if anything were possible, if you knew you could not fail, what's your plan? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And once you've got that ironed out, like where you want to be, is what you did yesterday and the day before that and the day before that, would you repeating those same behaviors and patterns and strategies get you to where you said you wanted to be in 5 years from now? And if the answer is yes, keep doing that, but maybe up the ante, find ways to continue to improve. But if the answer is no, or I'm not really sure, I think so, if there is not certainty there, then get some certainty from somewhere reliable.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we normally try and keep it lighthearted. I feel like this one was a little bit of a tougher episode to get through, but ladies and gentlemen, like we've seen the worst of this. We have to speak to the reality of what this looks like if you do not take action right now. This will almost uniformly get worse. And on a long enough timeline, it gets a lot worse.
Unfortunately so.
So that's yet another episode of the Diabetes Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thank you so much for having an open mind and really examining what you want from your life to live your life to the fullest. I appreciate your bravery in this without shame. There is no room for shame or judgment in all of this. It is just looking at what is and what is also possible with tons and tons of hope and knowing that there's a better way. So thanks.
You've heard the truths. Now choose your next move. If you're serious about real change, take action now. Create a 5-year plan and start taking the steps to put diabetes into remission. Steps that we talk about every week here on the podcast. If you have specific questions you'd like answered, send them to support@empowereddiabetes.com and we will answer them on the podcast. If you still need additional support, please schedule a call with us at empowereddiabetes.com, where we can map what's happening, where you want to go, and how to get you into remission for good. Don't trade another day of your health for comfort. Take the first step now. Take courage. You can do this, and we can help.